7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 9-track mind? Bullshit. There's 12 songs on here. Hey everyone, John from ARTV. It's time for a review of the debut studio album by pop singer Charlie Puth. It's called 9-Track Mind. I'm no stranger to Mr. Puth, and no, I'm not talking about See You Again. Congratulations, everyone in the world knows about that song. No, I'm not claiming to know that before everyone else did. I knew Puth back in his YouTube days, and I feel like a lot of that didn't translate into what people know him as now. I'm not going at this alone though. I'm joined by my friend Mark over at Spectrum Pulse. If you have not checked out his channel yet, definitely do so. It's linked in the description down below. Let's go ahead and transition over to that. And just like that, Mark's right here with us. Mark, introduce yourself for those who might not be familiar with your channel.
Hi there folks, my name is Mark. I talk about music, art, and culture on my regular channel and occasionally on this fellow's channel. And we cover all manner of albums. Is it really worth this covering this 9-track mind? It doesn't even have the dignity to be 9 tracks long.
That was the first thing that came to mind. I actually made an introductory joke. That's like the intro to my overall video. I was like, 9-track mind? Bullshit, there's 12 songs here, Charlie Puth. I don't know. To answer your question though, is it worth our time? Well, I struggled to really... I tried filming like 3 times to do a solo review, and it wasn't coming out. I was just so frustrated, and I had bullet points lined up and everything, and it still didn't feel like it was coming out right. So me and Mark decided to team up here and get through 9-Track Mind. I think we can both agree that it was a frustrating listen for us, but what was the most frustrating part for you?
Well, here's the thing. For me, I didn't have background in Charlie Puth. I wasn't coming in with any sort of expectations outside of the stuff that I'd heard on the radio. I heard See You Again. I had no real expectations one way or another on that because I never really cared for the Fast and Furious franchise. It just didn't do a lot for me. Then I heard Marvin Gaye. Things kind of went downhill from there.
We saw where that song landed on both of our respective year-end lists, and it wasn't the best, spoiler alert.
Yeah.
I have a little bit more of a background with Puth, just considering I knew him from his YouTube days. I think you actually mentioned to me before we started this that you knew he had a couple of independent albums that had been pulled off of iTunes. I've heard music from those. I knew him primarily, though, for writing music for people like Shane Dawson, these little cutesy intros for that, the Shaytards vlogs, and I always thought to myself, this is kind of like a little warm, familiar feeling. You know that you're a part of something like the Full House intro. You get sucked into that, and you're just like, okay, maybe I'm not a fan of this, but hey, it's got that warm feel into it, like I know who it is. But I always thought, could I listen to an album's worth of material from this guy, or even like full songs? I don't know, and I think some of those feelings bled over for me. Some of the problems I had there initially bled over into 9-Track Mind.
If I'm thinking about sitcom themes I like, I'll stick with Seinfeld over this, because, you brought up the point of Full House, and it's a perfect way to describe the feel of this album, because it is so sanitized and white in its presentation. And in terms of the vocal delivery, in terms of the appropriation of that retro 50s doo-wop that people have gotten back into nowadays, but where other artists like Andy Grammer have pulled upon something that is actually a little bit more earnest, shows a little bit more understanding of the whole genre, this doesn't really have that, especially in the vocal delivery, and that got under my nerves. There's a level of authenticity that I feel is lacking on this album.
Oh yeah, that's a huge problem for me. Just the main fact that I feel like he's trying to sell himself so hard as this Casanova type on tracks like My Gospel, which is just one that really, really kind of hurt whenever I was listening to it. Because you think of Charlie Puth, and then you think of the type of person that he's trying to portray, and it doesn't add up. The pacing of that song, it's like he's talking about this dark night, a casino, and it's just like you think of someone who would be a little bit more intimidating, and he's trying really hard to push himself across, not only on this track, but all throughout, as kind of this lover on the verge. And I'm not buying it, Mark. I'm not buying it for 2 seconds.
Well, here's what he's trying to do, and here's what it came across to me immediately. The first thing I was thinking about was Brendan Urie, what he was doing with the whole Sinatra imitation off of Death of a Bachelor. But then it really crystallized. That song in particular, My Gospel, it's Grenade 2.0 by Bruno Mars. In the appropriation of the vintage style, the attempt to sound cooler, and that slight level of artificiality. The only difference is that the production's nowhere near as good. It feels so thin and cheap. You throw in as many little fake record scratches as much as you want there, but it doesn't have that vintage flair. It doesn't have that mono sound that made those old 50s vinyl actually accessible, made those old vintage Hollywood, golden age of Hollywood musicals actually work. There's no sense of larger glamour to this album that I feel is a real thing that drags it down. There's no sense that it's epic or swelling. At least Brendan Urie got that.
Right, and this is just more of like a flat line all throughout. Puth produced, I don't know if you know, but Charlie Puth produced the majority of this record himself.
You can tell.
And yeah, because it's like, honestly, it's like garage band thin at points. I've heard people do a lot more with a lot less. That's all I'm saying.
Now look at Grimes. She managed to pump out some considerable albums just primarily on her own using GarageBand. I think the larger issue is that when you have pickups like the guitar on that song with Selena Gomez, what the hell was it called?
One Call Away.
We Don't Talk Anymore.
We Don't Talk Anymore. Yeah, the little cutesy song with Selena Gomez.
The song that's trying to be somebody that I used to know and failing.
Yes, falling flat on the face there with that track. That song, it's funny that you mentioned somebody that I used to know, because with that track, it's like a storyline of a breakup, two people that aren't together anymore, and they're kind of reflecting on it. But even there, it's something that I feel invested in, like as a storyline. I want to see what's going on with these two people in their relationship, maybe why it fell apart or why it could work again. But on this track, I can't be bothered to care one way or another. Both of these people don't feel authentic or genuine to me, and there's no real emotion behind the song. It's just two singers.
The hilarious thing about that, and the more I'm thinking about this, partially it's because Charlie Puth is way over-emoting and Selena Gomez can't emote. But one of the things that stands out to me about that song is that when you have somebody that I used to know, I think it's a really good comparison. Goche and Kimbra, they're human beings. They have realistic flaws in their delivery and the stories that they present. They both can go at each other, but it feels believable. Whereas when you have somebody like Selena Gomez and Charlie Puth, it feels so inauthentic and thin because, hey, surprise, two people are no longer in a relationship with each other. They're seeing other people actively. Just move on. You might not talk anymore in the same way, shape, or form. It doesn't seem remotely believable. Just like how
it seems like he's confused by that for some reason.
Just like how Marvin Gaye is not remotely believable when it comes to sex. Like, that's the thing. There's no believability in sense of this album. And it leads to me to one of two conclusions. Either one, he is trying and believes everything he's selling is just monumentally delusional. Or the case where he doesn't believe it and it's a con, and it completely undercuts any romantic sentiment of the songs, because a lot of these songs where he's trying to play himself as romantic get really insufferable.
Right, and it's like he tries to play himself as this so over-the-top grandiose lover, and like you said, I don't know which side of the fence he falls on, whether he's believing himself or he's just putting it on. He thinks this is how you put yourself out there in a song. You just have to go big or go home, because you look at moments like As You Are, which features the awkward verse from Shy Carter, where he says, he keeps repeating that he would climb Mount Kilimanjaro 1,000 times. And it's just, I don't understand why he's trying to push that across so hard. It's like the lover that's trying so hard to impress their significant other with things, materialistic things, or this idea, when you would rather just have the human element, like you were talking about in Somebody That I Used to Know.
The funny thing is, in that there's a song on the end of the new Block Party album, which I'm going to be covering recently, the final song on that album, where he's like, I would spend all my money on you. That's one of the lyrics in that song. And you know what? It comes across as craven, a little desperate, a little pathetic, but it's intended to. Whereas on the final song here, Some Type of Love, which is probably my favorite song on the album, if that it goes for some bit of a retro boy band feel. But on that note, he tries to go for that, and yet he still brings in that when the fire's around us, when the world's on fire around us, this is love in the end of the apocalypse, and we get no sense of that bigger drama. And that just really infuriated me.
There's Well, honestly, I mean, that might be infuriating, but there's things that light bigger fires under here. I mean, all throughout, I felt like Puth's vocal performances were really inconsistent. I mean, there's a few tracks that I thought he was at least decent on. I might not have been a fan as the songs as a whole, especially on a lyrical level. That's my biggest struggle all throughout. I mean, One Call Away and the second track, Dangerously, I think they're innocent enough in terms of the instrumental. I can listen to them if I turn my mind off, but if I get to tracks like Suffer, Mark, why does this exist? I don't understand. You get to the chorus of this song and you hear Charlie Puth just reaching for the stars. It's like he's taking his throat and just like jerking it up and making it come out. It doesn't work. I don't want to ever hear this song again. And it's like one of those moments, like you said, I mean, you were talking about earlier with how unsexy and unflattering kind of Marvin Gaye was. And I just feel like that's how any of these songs would come across to any lover that you would sing them to.
But we're speaking from a larger frame of reference, I think. We've listened to classic soul. We listen to good R&B. And that's the framing that I think that kind of irks me about Charlie Puth. I'm not sure how much of it that he clearly has an affection for those classic romantic albums, but I don't think he understands them. Like, when it comes to Suffer, I hear I Put a Spell on You, Cross with Alicia Keys is Falling. That's those two songs put together. You see a lot of that in the chorus melody line. But
definitely.
But the song that jumped out at me is the real one that pissed me off was Dangerously. The lyrics of the song. The lyrics.
I was about to say, where did they go? Where did it go so wrong? And I was about to say, he's probably thinking lyrics. That was the main problem for me.
I got two hands tied behind my back, and I can control the situation. But the second this girl has control of the situation, it's living dangerously. I mean, seriously, dude, Eminem makes a relationship dangerous. Nick Cave makes a relationship dangerous. I'll even settle for Ed Sheeran makes a relationship dangerous. But this is so
add Charlie
sanitized.
Puth to the list. Charlie's on the list now. Fathers, lock your daughters away because Charlie Puth is coming for him. It's a new common household name. The next Eminem and Marshall Mathers LP controversy.
And you know what? Like, when it comes down to songs where he wants to go hyperbolic, go ahead. That can work for some vocalists. Sia can sometimes pull this off. But when it's paired with instrumentation that is so limp and such a complete lack of a sense of humor or a sense of greater subtext in the writing, when it comes down to it, many of these songs have suffered the same problem as a lot of 50s doo-wop does in retrospect. It's formulaic as hell.
Right down to a T.
A lot of these songs they run through the basic cliches of loving or moving on. And a lot of the breakup songs on this album really piss me off because they're framed as so light and fluffy. And I'm really like, yeah, I'm walking away from you. I'm leaving you. The one song is Losing My Mind because he's framed as like, it all came so easy and now I'm going to leave you.
And Up All Night is another one that comes to mind for me whenever you're thinking about that whole thing, where he's thinking about where everything went wrong. And it's just like you said, it's the basics. It's the basics over and over again. And each time the chorus rolls in, it's just so lifeless and so bland, so flavorless, that I'm wondering exactly what the market that he's trying to capitalize on is and who would relate to it.
Well, here's the thing. Like, I completely see there being a market for this music, and that's the thing that scares me on some level, because as much as I've seen the pop charts evolve over the past couple of years, we've moved away from Kesha to this. And I prefer Kesha any day of the friggin' week.
I think
you know what?
We both agree on that one.
Because you know what? It's trashy, but there's subtext. There's elements of parody. There's elements of sophistication to this. And even at the worst, it can be kind of dangerous. It can be kind of filthy in a way that's at least interesting. This is not. This is music that is sanitized and bland as hell. I don't have to come down on blandness as an issue, but you know what? At least Rachel Platten tried to give her songs more energy and spark than this.
Oh, exactly. It's not like I would send out a glowing recommendation for that. Obviously, I didn't when I covered it, but it wasn't something that I was actively telling people to stay away from. I feel like this is almost a warning video that we're doing for Charlie Puth here.
This album is, I can say this quite frankly, this album is bad. It's the sort of bad that's not immediate bad. It's the immediate bad is like the last album we covered, Tyga and Chris Brown, Fan of a Van, the album. That is bad in a very immediate and recognizable way. But to some extent, I get why people can turn it off and just not care about it, because they don't have to read to the lyrics, they don't have to see anything there. It's shallow, it's pathetic. This album, I think, is honestly worse, because it taps into an element I wouldn't quite say is sinister, but it's for that sanitized cover that's laid over everything.
Right.
That covers up some of the uglier attitudes underneath it, and that to me is worse. Because you know what? Say what you will about Chris Brown, the ugliness is all right there in front of you.
Charlie Puth, he's the snake in the grass. Waiting.
Exactly.
He's waiting, as you say. He's slithering through on these tracks. And with the Chris Brown and Tyga collab album, at least what I can say there is that some of the production was interesting. There was moments,
yes.
At least I could, like you said, turn off my mind and get lost in the music. Here, what exactly is there that's more in depth for me to look for? There's not much there. It's all right at the surface, and I could pick off, okay, there was a weak guitar there, they tried a little bit of trap production there, but other than that, I mean, what else do I have to do but then be bored while listening to it?
It's more than just boring, I think. I think this album just has that sick undercurrent that you get when you visit your very hard right wing, very heavily religious, very neoconservative like family members that you don't like to associate with that much. And you know what? I'll admit I don't really suffer that. I get along very well with my family.
Yeah.
But it's the stereotype you see on television. And that's what really how flimsy and thin this album is. It is a stereotype.
Right.
And as such, I can't take it seriously, but there's a lot of people who will.
Right.
And that's what bothers me.
That's what scares both of me and you, I think. And while,
yes.
There's a couple of moments, I would give it to Puth. I don't hate everything. Like I said, there's instrumentals that I think are decent, like One Call Away, Dangerously. It started off, and like I said, if I shut off the mind, it's all right. But once you get down to it, there's not much here for me, and there's also not much that I could possibly give a recommendation to. What are you feeling as far as a rating goes, Mark?
I gotta be honest, this is the worst album I've heard thus far this year. I'm thinking a good 3 out of 10 and absolutely 0 recommendation.
And just knowing me and how little I could ever see myself coming back to this I don't think that there's a friend out there that I dislike enough to recommend this to. I'm gonna go a notch lower and go 2 out of 10 on your scale, 1 out of 5 on mine. Low blow maybe, but just being honest. Guys, if you haven't checked out Mark's channel yet, do so. Thanks for coming on today and discussing this album with me. Maybe next time we'll tear into something a little bit more fun for both of us.
Please, like we talked about Rise Against once, we can do that again.
Exactly. Guys, if there's anything coming out over the summer, maybe that I know that's far away, but if there's something that they're even teasing and you think you might want us to team up on it, let us know in the comments. Other than that, thanks for coming on today, Mark, and be sure to check out his channel. All right.
Thanks a lot, John. I'm happy to be here.